So Blake Lively is apparently not going to Taylor Swift's wedding, and the whole story about a reconciliation phone call between them just completely fell apart. Like, that's not me guessing, that's multiple major outlets all running sources at the same time saying the same thing. Nope. Didn't happen, no call, no invite, no olive branch. And what's wild is how fast the Daily Mail's exclusive just crumbled once people actually started checking. Let's talk about what the Daily Mail actually ran. They came in hot with this very detailed, very specific story. Taylor Swift had a phone call with Blake Lively. Taylor was not happy about being dragged into the whole legal mess, obviously, but she was more receptive to speaking to Blake as the suit came to a close. An insider told them Blake was ready to resume their friendship because it really was what caused its demise. Since their friendship fractured, both parties have apparently made an effort to revive this once rock-solid relationship. They said Blake is on the cusp of getting a second chance, that they've had loose conversations to test the water, that Blake is slowly getting back into the fold now that Taylor is having a change of heart. Another source claimed Blake does not want to be seen as not going to the wedding because her image is very important to her. And then there was this detail that Blake already picked out a wedding dress. She's prepared for the nuptials. She's ready. Now, if you just read that and moved on with your day, you might think, okay, maybe they're working it out. You might even feel a little warm and fuzzy about it because who doesn't love a friendship reconciliation story? It's the kind of narrative that sells magazines and gets clicks. Two powerful women, a rift, a lawsuit, a cooling off period, and then a heartfelt phone call where they hash it all out and ride off into the sunset together. It's practically a screenplay. But here's what happened next, and this is where it gets really interesting. Extra came out and said, nope, this is false. Exclusive, Swift and Lively did not have a reconciliation phone call ahead of the wedding. According to their sources, recent reports that Taylor called Blake to clear the air are way off. No call was made. Then The Sun understands there was no reconciliation phone call. Then Entertainment Tonight learns there's been no phone call between Taylor and Blake despite that Daily Mail report. Multiple outlets, all with their own sources, all saying the same thing at the same time. That's not a coincidence. That's not competing gossip. That's Taylor Swift's team making sure the record gets set straight and set straight fast. And honestly, if you've been paying attention to how Taylor Swift operates, this is exactly how she handles things she wants shut down. She doesn't do public statements about personal drama. She doesn't post on social media clarifying who she's friends with. She doesn't sit down for interviews where she gently corrects the record. She has her people call the trades and the tabloids and make it very clear what is and isn't true. When you see 3 or 4 outlets all debunking the same story within the same news cycle, that's not reporting. That's a coordinated response. That's Tree Payne, Taylor's longtime publicist, working the phones with surgical precision. Someone wanted it known that there was no call, no reconciliation, and by implication, no wedding invite for Blake Lively. The message couldn't be clearer if Taylor herself stood on a rooftop and shouted it through a megaphone. So let's step back and look at what actually happened between these two, because the idea that they'd suddenly be fine doesn't hold up when you look at the facts. Blake Lively and Taylor Swift were close, very close. Taylor had Blake and Ryan Reynolds over to her Rhode Island house for parties. Blake directed a music video for Taylor. They posed together at events. Taylor even mentioned Blake's kids in her album liner notes. This was a real friendship, not a Hollywood acquaintance situation. You don't put someone's children's names in your album credits unless you genuinely love them and consider them family. That's a level of intimacy that goes beyond the usual celebrity friend group dynamics. They spent holidays together. They vacationed together. Blake and Ryan were fixtures at Taylor's famous 4th of July parties, the ones that used to set the internet on fire with squad photos. This wasn't a casual thing. This was a deep, embedded, years-long bond. Then the whole "it ends with us" drama happened, and during that, Blake's legal team made a move that pulled Taylor directly into the mess. Private communications got referenced. Taylor's name started showing up in headlines connected to a lawsuit she had nothing to do with. Suddenly, Taylor Swift, who is arguably the most image-conscious celebrity on the planet, was being mentioned in legal filings and gossip columns in connection with the workplace dispute she wasn't involved in. The details are messy and complicated, but the bottom line is that Blake's side of the conflict brought Taylor into it, whether intentionally or not. And Taylor Swift, who is extremely careful about her public image and who she's associated with, suddenly found herself linked to someone else's legal battle. That's the kind of thing Taylor does not tolerate. She spent her entire career managing exactly how she's perceived and getting dragged into someone else's controversy because of texts or conversations you had in private. That's a hard line. That's the kind of thing that ends friendships permanently in Taylor's world. The Daily Mail story tried to frame this as Taylor being upset, but eventually softening. Their insider said Taylor was more receptive as the suit came to a close. But think about that timeline. The suit settled. Blake Lively's public image took a serious hit during the entire process. The way she promoted that film, the way she handled the press, the way the behind-the-scenes conflict with Justin Baldoni played out, none of it made her look good. And through all of that, Taylor Swift said nothing publicly. She didn't defend Blake. She didn't show up with her. She didn't post a supportive story. She didn't like a single post. She didn't leave a single comment. Silence, complete and total silence. And when Taylor Swift goes silent on someone she used to be photographed with constantly, that's the loudest statement she can make. Taylor Swift's silence is a weapon she wields with devastating effectiveness. She knows that saying nothing sends a bigger message than any carefully worded statement ever could. By refusing to even acknowledge Blake's existence during this entire saga, Taylor made it abundantly clear where she stood. Now, the Daily Mail also claimed that a source said Blake and Taylor never fully stopped being friends. That despite a tumultuous relationship in recent years, they were still connected. I find that very hard to believe, and here's why. Taylor Swift has a very clear pattern with friendships that end. She doesn't do the slow fade. She doesn't do the we're still cool but just busy thing. When she's done with someone, she's done. Look at what happened with Karlie Kloss. They were inseparable. Taylor had Karlie on the cover of Vogue with her. They did road trips and posted photos and seemed like best friends. Then something shifted and Karlie was out. Not just out of the inner circle, out entirely. No more mentions. No more appearances. The friendship just ceased to exist publicly. The same thing happened with other people who crossed her or got too close to people she had issues with. Taylor doesn't do messy public reconciliations. She doesn't have dramatic phone calls to clear the air that then get leaked to the Daily Mail. That's not how her world works. That's not how any of this works. Think about the Karlie Kloss situation for a moment longer because it's instructive. Karlie was supposed to be Taylor's platonic soulmate. They were so close that people genuinely speculated about the nature of their relationship. They had matching best friend tattoos, for crying out loud. And then something happened. To this day, nobody knows exactly what, but the theories range from Karlie getting too close to Scooter Braun to Karlie leaking information to the press. Whatever it was, the result was the same. Karlie was erased. She became a non-person in Taylor's universe. Taylor didn't issue a statement. She didn't subtweet. She just stopped. She stopped posting about Karlie. She stopped being seen with Karlie. The friendship vanished overnight, and years later, when Karlie tried to extend an olive branch by attending one of Taylor's concerts, the message from Taylor's camp was reportedly icy. That's the pattern. That's the blueprint. And Blake Lively appears to be following the exact same trajectory. And here's the other thing that makes the Daily Mail story so obviously planted. They said Blake has a dress picked out. They said she's prepared for the nuptials. They said everyone around Taylor is aware Blake could attend, but may not. But it won't be because she isn't welcome. That's very specific detail that only comes from one of two places. Either someone in Blake's camp fed that to make it seem like she's still in the mix, or someone completely fabricated it. Given how fast Taylor's side shut it down, I'm leaning toward the first option. Blake Lively's team has been working overtime to rehab her image. We've seen the solo errand runs, the carefully placed paparazzi shots, the attempts to look relatable and normal. A story about Taylor Swift forgiving her and welcoming her back into the fold would be enormously valuable for Blake right now. It would signal to the world that whatever happened, the biggest star on the planet has decided she's still okay. That's the kind of endorsement you can't buy. That's the kind of social currency that's worth more than any carefully staged pap walk. And the Daily Mail story reads like someone was trying very hard to manifest that endorsement into existence. It reads like wishful thinking dressed up as journalism, but manifesting isn't reality. And reality appears to be that Blake Lively was not at Taylor Swift's Rhode Island estate this past weekend when there was a massive fireworks show and a lot of private cars coming and going. People were speculating it was a bachelorette celebration for Taylor. Travis Kelce was seen partying with his own crew around the same time, which lined up with the idea that they were both doing a pre-wedding events. And Blake was photographed running errands by herself in a very questionable outfit. Pale pink tunic, pastel patterned jacket, pink shoes, jeans. She looked like she was shopping for pottery supplies, not preparing for one of the most exclusive weddings of the decade. If she were invited to a bachelorette weekend at Taylor Swift's mansion, she wouldn't have been wandering around solo in that getup. She would have been behind those gates with the other guests. The fact that she was out and about, clearly not at the event, tells you everything you need to know. It tells you she wasn't on the guest list. It tells you she wasn't part of the inner circle. It tells you that whatever relationship they once had is not what it used to be. Now, I do need to say this. The wedding hasn't happened yet. Things could change. Taylor could decide last minute to extend an invitation. Blake could show up and surprise everyone. Until that ceremony actually takes place and we see who's in attendance, nothing is 100% certain. But all the evidence right now points in one direction. Multiple sources saying no call, no reconciliation. Taylor's side actively shutting down the story, Blake visibly absent from the Rhode Island gathering, the pattern of how Taylor handles friendships that go bad, it all lines up. The Daily Mail story feels like a plant that didn't take, and the speed with which it was debunked is actually more revealing than the original report. The original report told us what Blake Lively's team wanted us to believe. The debunking told us what Taylor Swift's team wanted us to know. And those are two very different things. What makes this whole thing even stranger is watching how some Taylor Swift fans have reacted. There are Swifties out there still defending Blake Lively, still acting like anyone criticizing Blake is being unfair or misogynistic. And I genuinely don't understand that position when you look at what actually happened. Blake Lively's actions directly led to Taylor Swift getting negative press. Private details got exposed. Taylor's name got dragged into a lawsuit that had nothing to do with her. If you're a fan of Taylor Swift, why would you be defending the person who caused that? It's not misogynistic to look at a situation and say, hey, this person made choices that hurt someone I support, and those choices had consequences. That's just basic accountability. The fact that some fans can't see that is genuinely confusing to me. Taylor herself clearly sees it. Her silence throughout this entire saga speaks volumes. She didn't ride in to save Blake. She didn't make statements of support. She just let the distance speak for itself. And now her team is actively making sure the public knows there's been no reconciliation. That's not the behavior of someone who's ready to welcome Blake back with open arms. That's the behavior of someone who's drawing a line in the sand and making sure everyone can see it. I think part of what's happening here is that some fans have conflated supporting women with supporting every woman in every situation, regardless of what she's done. And that's not how it works. You can believe in women's empowerment and still hold women accountable for their actions. You can be a feminist and still say that a particular woman made a mistake that hurt someone else. The idea that Blake Lively must be defended at all costs because she's a woman, even when her actions demonstrably harmed another woman, is a fundamental misunderstanding of what accountability looks like. Taylor Swift herself has been the subject of unfair criticism for years. She knows what it's like to be dragged through the mud. And if she's decided that Blake Lively crossed a line, I'm inclined to trust her judgment. She knows the situation better than any of us do. She knows what was said, what was done, and what the consequences were. And her actions, or rather her complete lack of action, tell us everything we need to know. There's also something to be said about the way Blake Lively has handled herself throughout this entire saga. The promotion of It Ends With Up was widely criticized. People felt she was tone deaf, that she was treating a movie about domestic violence as if it were a lighthearted romantic comedy. She was promoting her hair care line and her beverage company while ostensibly doing press for a film about serious subject matter. The disconnect was jarring and audiences noticed. Then the behind the scenes conflict with Justin Baldoni became public and the narrative shifted. Suddenly, Blake was positioning herself as someone who had been wronged, someone who had stood up against inappropriate behavior on set. But the details that emerged were complicated and public opinion was divided. Some people supported her. Others felt she was using serious allegations to deflect from her own PR missteps. And through all of it, Taylor Swift's name kept coming up. Private text messages were referenced. The implication was that Taylor had been involved in some capacity, that she had been a sounding board or an advisor. And that's the kind of thing Taylor Swift does not appreciate. She values loyalty and discretion above almost everything else. Having her name dragged into a public legal battle, even tangentially, is the kind of betrayal she doesn't forgive easily. So where does this leave us? Blake Lively is out there doing solo errands in frumpy outfits, trying to project normalcy, while her team apparently shops reconciliation stories to the tabloids. Taylor Swift is in Rhode Island with her actual friends, celebrating her upcoming wedding, keeping her circle tight and controlled. The Daily Mail is standing by their story, but literally everyone else with credible sources is saying it's false. And the wedding is approaching. If Blake shows up, it'll be the surprise of the year. If she doesn't, it'll just confirm what all the evidence already suggests. Taylor Swift made a decision about this friendship, and that decision hasn't changed. Sometimes the story isn't about what happened, it's about who's trying to make you believe something happened. And in this case, the attempt to sell a reconciliation says more about Blake Lively's current position than any actual friendship ever could. She needs this story to be true. She needs the world to believe that Taylor Swift has forgiven her, that she's still part of the squad, that she hasn't been exiled from the kingdom. Because being exiled from Taylor Swift's inner circle carries a stigma in Hollywood. It's a scarlet letter. It's a sign that you've done something unforgivable, that you've violated the code, that you're no longer trustworthy. And for someone whose image has already taken a battering, that's the last thing Blake Lively needs. But needing something to be true doesn't make it real. And right now, reality looks a lot like a door that's still very firmly closed. Taylor Swift is moving forward with her life, planning her wedding, surrounding herself with people who haven't caused her problems. Blake Lively is on the outside looking in, trying to convince the world that the door is still open a crack. But Taylor's team made sure we all know it isn't. No phone call, no reconciliation, no invite. The Daily Mail can stand by their story all they want. The rest of the media landscape has spoken, and the message is clear. Taylor Swift is done with Blake Lively. And in Taylor's world, done usually means done forever.